Hi, I'm Joy McDonnell. Knits and lace are very trendy, and Simplicity has put them together into this cute pattern, number 8016. It's a top that has a great cut, it's nice and flowy and very comfortable, and it has this cute little lace inset in it. Now, working with lace can be a little bit tricky, so I'm going to show you some tips and techniques that are going to help make working with that lace so easy. To make this top, you're going to need between 1 1/4 yards and 1 1/2 yards of a knit. This is the one that I picked. And then you'll also need 5/8 of a yard of a lace. I liked this lace with the floral motif on it. There's so many to choose from. Then to make that neckline nice and smooth, you're going to need some bias tape. Look for a double fold bias tape that's 1/4 inch wide, and this will do the trick in your neckline.
Follow the guide sheet for laying out and cutting your fabric pieces. 3 pieces will be cut from the knit fabric. Piece number 4, the front, is cut on the fold. Piece number 5, the back, is also cut on the fold. And 2 sleeves, piece number 3, will each be cut separately. From the lace, you will cut 3 pieces. 1 yoke front on the fold, 1 yoke back on the fold, and 2 lower sleeves. Pieces 6, 7, and 8. Now we will begin assembly. We're going to pin piece number 6 to piece number 4 at the center. We're going to match the notches and the center front. We want to make sure that the right sides are facing up. The lace will come over the knit, and we'll look for that center marking and pin there. Then I'm going to move to the outside and give a pin, following those notches and looking for any points that I have to match things up with. Get that last pin right in there, and there we go, we're ready for sewing. Now we're going to move on to pieces number 7 and 5. This is the back. Piece number 7 goes on top of piece number 5, and again we're going to look for those centers and notches. And when we pin, let's pin first at this notch, and then we'll come over here and pin at the other notch, and then we'll come right across matching up the ends. And then we have that all ready for sewing. Our sleeves are assembled the same way, with the lace on top of the knit fabric. Now it is time to start sewing. We're going to be using a machine needle for jersey. It's a ballpoint needle and an all-purpose thread. I've got on a walking foot, and I've got my machine set to a stretch stitch, and I'm using a 5/8 inch seam allowance. And I'll go ahead and get started. I'm using the stretch stitch so that as I wear my clothing, it will move with me. So look at your machine. If you don't have a stretch stitch, use a zigzag stitch. Once you have your stitch in place, press it down. I try to press mostly with steam and really not even touch the iron to the piece. Lace can be a little bit tricky, so I put the iron over, pump out a whole bunch of steam, and then use my fingers to kind of place that fabric where I want it to go. Our next step is to sew up the shoulder seams. We'll go ahead and pin those together. You want to make sure that your right sides are together. Double check your seam just to make sure. And then we'll go ahead and pin down those side seams. I'm going to go ahead and pin with the whole length of it, making sure that my notch is straight, my edges are even. Knits tend to roll a little bit, so I want to work out that fabric and go ahead and pin that together. Then I'm back at the machine using my stretch stitch again, and I'm going to go ahead and sew all those pieces together, the shoulder seam and the side seams.
Okay, now that we have our shoulder seams completed and our side seams, it's time to put on our neck edge. Here's where we're using the bias tape.
This is Wright's bias tape double fold, and it's 1/4 inch wide.
If you unfold the bias tape, you'll see that it has 4 folds on it. If you notice, one of the sides is a little shorter than the other. You want to place your bias tape so that that shorter side ends up being on the right side. And then we'll pin the bias tape all the way around the neck edge. As we get to the edges, to make a clean finish, we want to fold one side of the bias tape down. That's the one that's closest to your fabric. As you come back across the top, you want the other side of the tape to just lay over that folded edge. Now we're going to stitch following that first fold line all the way around the neck edge.
Here is my bias tape. I've stitched it to the edge of the lace, folding it over so that you can see it has 2 perfectly finished sides, and then we'll just top stitch right along this edge.
And here's our finished neck edge. That bias tape really makes it look nice.
The cuff is next. We will use the same technique that we did on the neckline to finish the base of the cuff. Stitch the bias tape to the lace edge along the fold line. And then you'll start to put your sleeve together by pinning the bias tape edge around the cuff and then the seams and then all the way up to the underarm seam. Double check to make sure that your seams are laying flat and everything's ready for the sewing machine. As you begin sewing, watch yourself over that seam again. You can use a stretch stitch on the knit part and a straight stitch on the lace part if you'd like. As you approach the bias tape, you're opening everything out so that it will all fold together in the end. Here we are, folding up that bias tape. You make the first fold and then the second fold, and you'll see how it comes all the way around the cuff. It makes a really nice edge. We'll go back to the machine to do our top stitching. I'm using a presser foot that has a guide that helps me get that top stitching right in the right spot, so it looks really pretty when I'm done. To set in the sleeve, we will need to do a little bit of ease stitching between the notches. This is where we take a basting stitch and work the fabric just a little bit to get it into the shape of the sleeve, and then it will set in perfectly. Now that we have our sleeve constructed, we're going to slide the sleeve inside the body of the shirt. You want to make sure that your sleeve is the right side out and your garment is the wrong side out. And you want to have that armhole facing you so that you can slide the sleeve right down inside. The first thing to match up are the seams and then the notches. And I've already got those pinned. Then I want to kind of match up the center top, and then I'm looking for those small dots where I can get the ease to fit into the cap of the sleeve and where I can get everything to smooth out nice and evenly without any puckers or gathers. So I want to take my time, and then we'll go right to the machine and stitch it in place. And at the machine I have a walking foot in place. I'm going to take my time, got lots of pins in here. The walking foot will help make both parts of the material move smoothly through that machine so that I'm not getting any of those tucks or gathers or anything. And I have the basting stitch in there. Don't worry about that because we're going to take that stitch out at the very end. After you finish this seam, go back and do one more seam a 1/4 inch away from this first one.
Bias tape is so helpful in making a shirt with lace on it. This inset is just highlighted so nicely with the bias tape along the neckline and then repeated again on the cuffs. I think it turned out really pretty, and I left the hem on mine unfinished. I like the way it rolls. You can finish yours or you can leave it unfinished like I did. I hope these tips and techniques were helpful for you. Sewing with lace can be a little bit tricky. If you have any good ideas that you'd like to share with us, be sure to put them in the comment section below. Also, when you make your shirt, share it with us on Instagram or on Facebook, and subscribe to our YouTube channel.